Hey distinction students, Civic Education with Knowledge and Academy. Your perfect tutor, Mr. Gilbert Sijo here. So in this video, we're going to look at a very interesting topic, a very important topic, the new topic, which is known as the Zambian Bill of Rights. The Zambian Bill of Rights. So we did the introduction to human rights, and that topic is in grade 10. We did the introduction to human rights. Now this one, the Zambian Bill of Rights, is in grade 12, comes in grade 12. So we are looking at the Zambian Bill of Rights, and under the Zambian Bill of Rights we're going to look at one, the introduction to this topic. What is this thing known as the Zambian Bill of Rights? The brief history of the Zambian Bill of Rights. We would like to know, where did this thing come from? Elements of the Bill of Rights. Fundamental rights and freedoms covered in the Bill of Rights. This is where we're going to talk about the articles and ways of enforcing the Bill of Rights. 5 things. So make sure that you are able to explain this after watching this video. Okay, so let us start now. We start with the introduction to the Zambian Bill of Rights. So what is this thing? The Zambian Bill of Rights is a list of fundamental rights and freedoms covered in Part 3 of the Zambian Constitution, which is the supreme law of the land. So don't be confused when you hear the word Zambian Bill of Rights. It is simply the list of fundamental rights, the list of rights. Now, where are these rights? These rights can be found in Part 3 of the Zambian Constitution. In Part 3 of the Zambian Constitution. So the Bill of Rights is entrenched in the Constitution and hence cannot be easily amended because of the strict amendment requirements. When we learned Constitution, which is the first topic, we said the only part of the Zambian Constitution which is rigid, which cannot be easily amended, is the Zambian Bill of Rights. Here it is now. So that's why we are saying it is entrenched in the Constitution, so it cannot be easily amended. It requires a referendum. It can only be amended after a national referendum in which not less than 2/3 or 50% of the eligible voters vote in favor of the amendment. So it is not easy to amend the Zambian Bill of Rights. Great. So the Constitution provisions in the Bill of Rights largely reflect provisions contained in the International Bill of Rights. So after this one, we are going to cover the International Bill of Rights, which comprises the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, UDHR, the International Convention on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, the International Convention on Cultural and Political Rights, and the 2 optional protocols, first and second optional protocol. So we are going to cover this under International Bill of Rights. But for now, we are covering the Zambian Bill of Rights. We have to start with ours. So there are rights which are enshrined or described in these or in the International Bill of Rights. So these are the rights which are largely reflected by the Zambian Bill of Rights. This means that rights which are in the Zambian Bill of Rights, we can say were gotten from the International Bill of Rights. That is the meaning. So when we cover the International Bill of Rights, we're going to understand this better. So let us look at the brief history of the Zambian Bill of Rights. The brief history. So the history of the Bill of Rights gets back to 1964 when we got independence. So the Bill of Rights was first incorporated for the first time in the Northern Rhodesia Self-Government Constitution of 1963. After we got independence, that is when they incorporated the Zambian Bill of Rights. So, we all have rights now. As Zambians, we have our rights, the entitlements, the freedoms to enjoy. So now they included, or they had put, the Zambian Bill of Rights in the Constitution of 1963, the self-government, which means we started ruling ourselves now. So this is the time when we were able to include things such as the Zambian Bill of Rights in the Constitution. So this is the brief history of the Zambian Constitution. Now, from 1964 The Zambian Bill of Rights has had several amendments, but for these amendments, we covered them when we are doing constitution, the history of the Zambian constitution. This is where we are going to have the Chona Constitutional Review Commission, the Mvunga, the Mwanakatwe, Mungomba, and the Amendment Act of 2016. So having talked about the history of the Zambian Bill of Rights, let us talk about the elements of this Bill of Rights. So the current Bill of Rights forms Part 3 of the Constitution, which covers Articles 11 to 32. Now, it starts with a preamble. What is a preamble? A preamble is an introduction to a document. So it also has a preamble. Then the second element is the extradite. This means to hand over a foreign criminal to their own state for prosecution. You are in Zambia and then you commit a crime. The Zambian Bill of Rights provides for that criminal to be handed over to their own state or country for prosecution. Then we have prosecute as the third element of the Zambian Bill of Rights. This means to start legal proceedings against a suspect. If you violate the Zambian Bill of Rights, it provides for itself to start the legal proceedings against that person who is alleged of having violated it. That is the meaning of prosecute. Then the fourth element of the Zambian Bill of Rights is the derogate. So to derogate is to reduce or lessen the strength or authority of a right. All the rights that are enshrined or described in the Zambian Bill of Rights have got derogations, or we can say limit the extent to which you can enjoy them. It doesn't mean since you have the freedom of expression, now you can express yourself in whichever way you feel like expressing yourself. You can insult anyone because you have the freedom of expression. You have freedom of movement, so you can move wherever, whenever you feel like moving. All the rights have got derogations. Then the fifth one is frivolous. Frivolous refers to a very serious case or situation. Then we have vexatious. This refers to a case that provokes trouble, anger, or distress. The last one is enforce. This means to give form to a law or to make law effective. So now we have explained the elements of the Zambian Bill of Rights. Let us look at these rights now. Fundamental rights and freedoms covered in the Bill of Rights. We start with Article 11. So in Article 11, we find the preamble. So in the preamble, there is general declaration that every person in Zambia is entitled to enjoy the human rights. Every person in Zambia is entitled to enjoy the human rights. That is Article 11. Article 12, there is protection of the right to life. It is described as the supreme human right as it forms the basis of other rights. This is the supreme human right, right to life. It even protects the life of unborn child. This implies that termination of pregnancies is prohibited by the law. Article 13 talks about protection of the right to personal liberty. This right deals with the procedure for arrest and detention which curtails the freedom of movement of an individual. This is the right that says if you are arrested without a warrant, you are supposed to stay in the police custody for 24 hours before you are brought before the court. If you are arrested with a warrant, you have to stay in the police custody for 48 hours before you are brought before a competent court. But there is a derogation. Like I said, there is a derogation to each and every right. The right says if you are arrested with a warrant, you are supposed to stay in the police custody for 48 hours or as soon as reasonably practicable. As soon as reasonably practicable. So if you stay in the police custody for more than 48 hours, don't think your right to personal liberty has been violated. Article 14 talks about the right to protection from slavery and forced labor. So slavery and forced labor prevents the liberty and freedom of an individual, as a person has little say over oneself. So you are protected from slavery and forced labor in Article 14. Article 15 of the Zambian Bill of Rights provides for protection from torture, inhuman or degrading treatment or punishment. That's why police officers are unable to mistreat you so as to obtain information from you as a suspect because of this right, protection from torture. So the right to freedom from torture, inhuman or degrading treatment is absolute. Article 16 talks about protection from deprivation of property. This protects the individual from being deprived of their property except in cases permitted by law, such as failure to pay tax. You cannot just come to my house and say, Mr. Gilbert, since you got that money from me and you haven't paid it back, you're going to give me your fridge, you're going to give me this. Meanwhile, that wasn't the agreement. I've got the right to protection from deprivation of property. You cannot get that property because we did not agree. We did not agree. And then we are saying, unless in cases permitted by law. Unless in cases permitted by law. So there are cases where if you fail to pay tax or you fail to pay debt, you are taken to court. In order to effect the judgment, the court can order to sell your property or to grab your property so as to effect the judgment or to recover those debts or so as to pay the tax that you failed to pay. Article 18, provision to secure protection of the law. The article gives provisions to secure protection of the law for any person charged with a criminal offense. It deals with administration of justice relating to pretrial test and detention. So here there is provision to secure protection of the law. You are protected by the law, even if you are charged with a criminal offense. Protection of the freedom of conscience, Article 19. So this article guarantees the freedom of thought and freedom of religion, which may also imply freedom to change religion or belief. That's why in Zambia you find that we have Muslims, we have Christians, under Christianity again we have Jehovah's Witnesses, we have Catholics, we have Seventh-day Adventists and many more. Because you have this right which is enshrined in Article 19, protection of the freedom of conscience. You have the freedom of thought. You can think in whichever way you feel like thinking. You have the freedom of religion. You can choose to be a Muslim. You can choose to be a Christian or a Hindu. Protection of freedom of expression in Article 20. So this article gives freedom to individuals to hold opinion, receive ideas and information, impart and communicate ideas and information to individuals. So this is where you have the freedom of expression, whereby if you see that something is not going well in the government operations, you are able to talk about it and say, we are not happy with this as citizens of this country. You have the freedom of expression. But like I said, rights have got derogation. Article 21 talks about protection of freedom of assembly and association. Every citizen has a right to assemble freely throughout Zambia. You can go to Southern Province, you are free to associate with anyone there. You can go to Chipata, even if you don't speak the language that is there, you can associate. So that is the protection of freedom of assembly and association. In Article 22, we have protection of freedom of movement. This article guarantees freedom to move freely throughout Zambia. If you want, you can move from Chingola to Chipata, from Chipata to Chavuma, Chavuma to Shisekedi, to wherever you want to go. You have the freedom of movement. Just make sure that you don't go to prohibited places. Protection from discrimination, Article 23. This article provides for the protection from discrimination on grounds of race, ethnicity, sex, place of origin, marital status, political opinion, color, creed, and belief. Any form of discrimination is prohibited by this right. It is prohibited.